advance the slide for me. We're seeing right now the disintegration of the Church of Christ in the United States of America. We average losing 18,541 church members annually. Annually, we lose 111 churches of Christ. That means every 3 days a Church of Christ is shutting their doors. In 2016, one of our Christian universities did a study to find out where we're going. And they noticed in 2016 we had about 12,300 churches of Christ. And they projected out the loss to see where we're heading. And they said if the rate of loss continues, by the year 2019, we'll have about 11,400 churches left. And they were spot on. That's exactly where we were. They said if that continues, by the year 2022, we'll just have over 10,000 churches of Christ left. And that's exactly where we were. Today, we number about 10,000, just barely over 10,000 churches of Christ. So what's going to happen in the next 25 years? 25 years later, 2049, we'll have about 3,000 churches of Christ left. Let's go to membership and look at it very quickly. In the year 2016, we had almost 1.2 million members of the Lord's church. That university projected that if we continue our rate of loss, by the year 2019, we'll have about 1.1 million members of the Lord's church. That's exactly where we were. In 2022, they said, if it continues, we'll have just over 1 million members left. That's exactly where we are today. They were spot on their projections. They said in 2049, if it continues, what will happen? We'll have about 275,000 members left. Brethren, we are losing church membership at an alarming rate. The good news this morning is that these are just projections. They don't have to come true. If we want to change the numbers, we have to change the formula. We have to change the pews. The answer to the problems we're facing today in our churches sit in our pews. We must engage the membership of the Church of Christ if we're going to change these numbers. We must undergo a cultural shift. We must undergo a change in the way we reach out into our communities. Brethren, obviously, build it and they will come isn't working. They're not coming. And so the only way we reverse these numbers is if we change the formula. We're going to have to in some way address the evangelistic crisis that's facing our churches. Right now, we've got little girls growing up in homes who will never see their mother involved in evangelism. We got little boys growing up who will never see their father conduct a Bible study. We have 2 generations sitting in our pews, and we don't even know what a Bible study looks like. And because of this, our churches are disintegrating before our very eyes. I'm not talking about the church in India this morning. I'm talking about the church in Dayton, Ohio. I'm talking about the Church of Christ in the United States of America. In Matthew chapter 28 and verse 19, Jesus said, go. Brethren, we cannot go if we sit in the pews. I do not have time this morning. The clock doesn't allow me enough time to train this church on how we can reach the lost. I'm very confident in your preacher. I'm very confident in the membership of the Lord's church. You're capable people. I don't challenge your love for souls. I don't challenge your passion to reach out to those in your community that are lost. This morning, what I'm seeing in churches as my family travels to about 45 churches a year, we spend 200 nights a year in a hotel room. We just came from East Chicago and West Hammonds. We started out in Tennessee. Now we're sitting here in Dayton, Ohio. And brethren, we're doing all of this for one purpose, because we want to train the saved to teach the lost. Because we know that our pulpits will not successfully reverse this trend line without your help. It doesn't matter who you are this morning. I don't care if you're a widow, a widower. It doesn't matter this morning if you're young or old, married, unmarried, whatever your status is in life. God needs your help. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 12 and 23, the body is not one member but many. We don't need everybody to be a preacher. We don't need everybody to be a Bible school teacher. But we need you. We need your help. And you might be thinking, well, my health is not as good as it used to be. I'm an older member. What can I do? Brethren, after this sermon, if you don't still know what you can do, you come talk to me. I'll give you a refund. Because when you come to a place in your life, when you're looking at yourself and you say, I don't know what I can do, If we can't answer that question in the Word of God, we just need to quit preaching. We just need to shut our doors. Friends, the Lord's church is not a social club. We are not the Lions Club. This church has one mission. Our mission is to seek and save the lost. And if that's not our mission this morning, I would suggest we sell this church building and go home. Our mission is to reach lost people, and God knows we're better at doing that together than we are by ourselves. You're an army. You're the greatest army in the world. There's never been an army like the Church of Christ. There's no army in the world that's ever put together a more effective and more potent fighting force than the Church of Christ. But you know what we're facing this morning? We're facing a church, by and large, that's ill-equipped and unprepared to meet the enemy. It's like George Washington standing on the river side of the Delaware River, and he's getting ready to take on the British Army, and he asks his troops, how many of you are ready for battle? And 10 of them raised their hand. Brother, he's going to lose. There's only one way for the Dayton Church of Christ. This church right here, the Needmore Road Church of Christ, there's only one way you're going to survive. You must evangelize. Brethren, we must evangelize. If we don't arise and evangelize and baptize, you're going to fossilize. You won't be here. This church won't make it. Brethren, look around. This church used to number in the hundreds. In the hundreds. And every year you watch the church decrease. It's not just here at Needmore Road. It is all over this country. And what I demonstrated this morning in Bible class, if you missed a Bible class this morning, I showed you dozens of churches of Christ who've turned this around, and they're growing. I went from Queens, New York to Baltimore, Maryland, New Hampshire, Michigan, all through the central of the United States. Churches that are waking up and realizing that if we can train the membership how to evangelize, they will respond. We need to train our members how to do this. We used to be the best at this. There was no one better than the Church of Christ. We would walk through this nation conducting these studies. Brethren, do you realize in 1953, we were such a potent force in this nation. Brother Richard, I want you to get that book right there on the front pew. I'm going to do something this morning. Get that black book right there in the front pew and hand it to me. I want to show you something this morning. This book right here. In 1953, this book was published. This is the American College Dictionary. And I want to read from this dictionary what they had to do. This is remarkable. To my knowledge, this has never happened before. And I want to read to you what the dictionary committee did in 1953 because of the Church of Christ. Christian, are you ready for the definition? Here it is. A follower of Jesus Christ. That was their first definition. Second definition, exhibiting the Spirit of Christ. Third definition, a disciple of Christ. And you keep reading down. When you get to the bottom definition of this word, they added one. You ready? A Christian, a Campbellite, a member of the Church of Christ. Brethren, in 1953, when they got to the word Christian, they defined it by you. I realized that the word Campbellite was used in derision. I get that. But the fact is that they had to change the definition of the word because now listen to this, one out of every 84 people in this country was a member of the Church of Christ. Brother, we were the fastest religious growing body in America. During 1953 to 1957, we doubled the size of the church. We did it again in the 60s. In the 70s, there were 2.5 million of us. One out of every 80 people in this nation is a member of the Church of Christ. Most people today don't know the difference between a member of a Church of Christ and a Mennonite. You know why that is? You know why they don't call your children a Campbellite? You know why? You know why your son is probably completely unaware of that word. Never been called that a day in your life. You know why? Because they don't have to. Brethren, we sit in our pews. We don't do this anymore. We don't go home to home. We don't sit around the table. We don't conduct Bible studies. We're not growing. We're not 1 out of every 80 anymore. We're 1 out of every 300. And our presence in this nation is diminished every single year. We are an inward-focused people. I wonder if you looked at your calendar here at Needmore Road. I don't know this, but I just wonder if you counted up all the events this church does. And I don't know the answer. But I wonder how many of those events does your neighbor know about? How many of those events do the people, the subdivisions that are around this church building, how many of those events are they aware of? Because most of what we do in our churches is about us. Teachers Appreciation Day, it's us. Graduation banquet, it's you. I mean, everything we do is about us and patting each other on the back and building up. And I'm not opposed to building up the church. I think we need to love each other. I think we should hang out together. And I tell you what, if there's one thing we're good at, it's eating. I mean, we're going to eat. I bet we're good at it here. I bet you're good at eating here. And I love to eat. Brethren, I wonder how many of these things reach out into our community. This morning, I want to franchise the New Testament church. That's what I want to do. I want to go back to the New Testament. I want to find out how they did it, and I want to keep doing it. And I'm going to give you 6 words, and our school is based on these 6 words, and you're going to see them. You're going to see them over and over again, because everything we do from this day forward is built on these 6 words. If you go back to the New Testament church, you're going to find out when we franchise it, that this is what they did. They made contacts with people. Now, every industry has a word for about what I'm going to do. For example, the military calls them recruits. Without them, there's no army. The airline calls them passengers. Without them, they go bankrupt. Teachers call them students. Without them, there's not a classroom. Dentists call them patients. If they don't have one, they have no practice. All right, doesn't matter where you go. We've got a term for it. We're just going to call them contacts. If we have no people, we have no church. And the early church was good at reaching out to people. They were good at connecting with people. And if we don't learn how to make contacts in the church, there's not going to be a church left. And so what we've got to do is break these down into small parts. We literally are going to have to teach our members how to make a contact. We're going to start at square one. Rule number 1, how do you make a contact in this world? Now, brethren, I realize that it's uncomfortable. I mean, with the sin around us, with the crime rate, and with you, as you look around and you see what's happening to this nation, it's tempting. Brother Cole, it's tempting for us to gather together and huddle and lock the doors and isolate ourselves from the world. It's tempting. Brethren, if you isolate yourselves from the world, there will be no evangelism. I would suggest that we insulate ourselves from the sins and not isolate ourselves from the sinners. Because if we want to help people go to heaven, we can't lock ourselves up in the church building and expect somehow we're going to grow. So we've got to tackle point 1, don't we, church? How do we make contact with people? All right, point number 2, how do we prospect the people? How do we till up the soils of the heart? How do we get them interested? How do we make them want to sit down? How do we get them to a point where they want to do this? Because the question, how do you get them there? All right, so I know it's the Word of God. I know they need to sit around the table, but how do I get them there? You got to learn how to do it. And that's what I'm going to do this morning. Her name is Brandy Fleming. She walked down the aisle, and she had a piece of paper in her hand. And the name was Sharon Fisher. I've been asking the church for help, and I was there at 11 years at the Willette Church of Christ. From half of those years, I carried that church on my back. I tried to do it all myself. And brethren, it doesn't matter how motivated, energetic, or talented you are, you just can't do that. And so I decided if we're going to grow, I'm going to need help. And I need the members to help me. And so the first step I took is I went to the membership and I said, I need names. You know people. Brother, I don't know. You work with them. They're lost. You have neighbors that I don't know about. People that live next to you that are lost. You have family members right now that are lost and I don't know them. And what I need you to do is when they have a life event, I want you to bring me their name. And so Brandy Fleming was one of the first ones to respond. She had a friend who was having a life event. She had surgery. She was very discouraged, and she brought me her name on a piece of paper. So I want everybody to take their Evangelism Simplified Guidebook, and I want you to turn to page 105. I want everybody to do this. All right? Everybody take your textbook. You should have one in your hand this morning. All right? I just don't want you to look at me. I want you to participate with me. Page 105. I want you to open it up, and I want you to look at this right there. Every church needs one of these. And so we're going to challenge you to create your prospect list. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you access to everything we have in this school. And one of the tools to download is called a prospect list. And that prospect list is my target list. And brethren, you'll never hit a target you don't aim at. And if you don't have a prospect list, I guarantee you're not going to have Bible studies. Who are we trying to reach? So if I want the congregation to help me, I need to list who we're trying to reach. So we printed this. We print this every week. It's updated every week. And on the first, we put Sharon Fisher, relationship, friend of Brandy Fleming, description, she's disgruntled, needs encouragement, address. And we're going to check the box. It says multiple, which means everyone in the Church of Christ is going to try to convert Sharon Fisher. Now, brethren, Sharon Fisher may be able to resist Brandy Fleming, but she will not resist the Willette Church of Christ. There's a big difference between trying to reach someone by yourself than for everyone trying to reach them. So we're going to use what we call a congregational approach. There's something unique about Matthew 28, verse 19, that everybody needs to realize that makes a big difference in how you evangelize. So if you don't read Matthew 28, 19 correctly, you could easily misunderstand what Jesus says. Jesus said, go ye and teach all nations. That term, go ye, is unique. The word ye is plural. It's not singular. What that means is, go ye means go all. Go ye just does not mean go me. I cannot do all the evangelism by myself. Go ye means go all, which means we need your help. So what can you do? I want to send everybody to the compassion card room. We got cards lying out, and I want everybody to write cards. We're going to all write cards to Sharon Fisher. We're going to do it strategically. We're going to be highly organized when we do it. We're going to have team members, coordinators. The cards will be laid out. There's going to be nothing left for chance. We're going to sit around a table, and from the 8-year-old to the 98-year-old, we're going to write cards. And we're all going to write cards. We're going to write a kind note to Sharon Fisher. And then the coordinator is going to take those cards. We're going to mail 3 or 4 on Monday, 3 or 4 on Tuesday, 3 or 4 on Wednesday, 3 or 4 on Thursday, 3 or 4 on Friday. And we're going to do it for 3 weeks. And Sharon's going to go out to her mailbox and have nothing but cards. And she's going to be overwhelmed with love. On some, have compassion, making a difference. It's biblical. What we're going to do is we're going to surround her with the love of the church. Now, she's going to go out to her mailbox and open up those cards and be moved. In fact, every day she's going to put them on her mantle, put them on her bed. She's going to say, Jimmy, I've never had so much love in my life. And she goes to work where Brandy Fleming's located. She said, Brandy, she said, when you said your church was going to pray for me, I had no idea. She said, I am overwhelmed with love. She says, I want to thank that church. And Brandy says, come visit. On Sunday morning, Nicole and I were getting ready. We noticed this couple walk in, and we walked up to him, and I said, my name's Rob, my wife, Nicole. And he said, my name's Jimmy Fisher. This is my wife, Sharon. Wait a minute. Sharon Fisher, that's her. I said, Sharon, I said, we've been sending cards to you. She says, you have. Are you the preacher here? I said, I am. She said, will you thank this church for all the cards they've sent me? I said, I'd be glad to. I got up in the pulpit. I thanked the church. I said, church, you did your job. They're here because of you. Because you took time to write that card. We got visitors in our pews this morning. Brethren, when you do your job, I'll do my job. But I can't do my job without you. There would be no Brand, there would be no Sharon, there would be no Jimmy if you didn't take part. After services, we walked up to him and I said, hey, Jimmy and Sharon, did you enjoy the service today? They said, we loved it. I said, we got a little custom at this church. My family always invites people out to eat. Would you like to go out to eat with us? She said, well, sure. Jimmy said, well, I like to eat. I said, okay, everybody likes to eat. I can see it. I can see it on you. We all like to eat. And so we went down to the restaurant, and we sat around the table, and we just talked. Now, I want you to open up your Evangelism Simplified Guidebook to the very last page, and I'm going to give you some questions to ask. I ask the same questions every time. It says notes. I need you to write down your introductory notes. I got 3 questions that I commonly ask people, and I'm trying to build a bridge. And I want that bridge to be built so I can get the gospel over to their side. Now, to build a bridge, we're just going to be human. Can you be human this morning? Let me ask you, can you care? Can you care about somebody besides yourself? If you can do that, you can do what I'm going to do. So as we're sitting at the table, I looked at Jimmy and Sharon. I said, Jimmy, where are you from? Question number 1, where are you from? Question number 1, where are you from? It's not hard. He looked at me and says, I'm a local boy. He talked about growing up locally. I looked at Sharon Fisher. I said, Sharon Fisher, where are you from? She says, I'm from the Bayou. Louisiana. Cajun food. Tell me about that Cajun food. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. All you got to do is ask questions. Do you know what I need to do when I want to make contact with somebody? Brother, if I wanted to make contact with you, I just need to let you talk. Everybody wants to talk. They want to tell me their life story. I don't know why it is when I go to Walmart with my wife. I don't understand this at all. This is why men normally don't go to Walmart. And so we're going around Walmart. I'm walking, and all of a sudden I look behind me, and she's gone. I don't know how this happens. And I start looking for her. I don't know what happened. We were on a mission. And so somehow the mission is no longer in force. Then I went back, and you know what's going on? She's talking to some complete stranger, and that stranger is giving my wife their life story. Why? They're lonely. Do you realize how many people right now are so lonely? They just want somebody to talk to. And if you'll ask the right questions, they'll tell you their life story in a matter of minutes. And there's nothing they'll leave out. Where are you from? Then my next question normally is, what do you do? I didn't even get to question number 2. That's my next one. What do you do? What do you do for a living? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is, what do you enjoy doing? What are things that you like to do? So I asked those 3 questions when I meet. I didn't get past question 1. We had a great time. After the dinner, and Jimmy and Sharon said, Rob, you know, we really enjoyed this. I said, would y'all come back? They said, oh, we're going to be back next Sunday. I said, great. So that Sunday night, I got to the church. And I said, church, I need your help. I want everybody to go to the compassion card room. I want everybody to grab a card that says, thank you for visiting. Come back soon. And I want everybody to send compassion cards to Jimmy and Sharon, inviting them back. So I don't want the form letter from the secretary. I want you to write a personal note. I need you to have some skin in the game. We're not going to hire this one out. We're going to ask the membership to get involved. Guess what happens when you do that? I'll show you exactly what happens. Because I'm sitting in my living room and I got this email. Hey, Rob, I received a message from Sharon's husband, Jimmy. He said he and Sharon received at least 4 cards a day thanking them for visiting or wishing Sharon well. He said it's just the type of church they've been looking for. One that would take care of Sharon if anything ever happened to him. Rob, now, he says he's still praying and trying to let God lead him to where he needs to be. I tried to be very encouraging. I offered to answer any questions that he might have, or even have a Bible study sometime. I also welcomed him back anytime. I wasn't expecting him to message me back so quickly with the question, Rob, do you have to be a member there to take communion? Now, Rob, I know if he's asking that question, he needs to know a whole lot more. Any suggestions? Now, if you were here last night, you know what my first suggestion is. Does anybody remember? Number 1, don't answer the question. The first principle of evangelism is that we don't answer questions. We do not answer questions. You know why? You know why we don't answer questions? Do you know why I'm not chasing that Lord's Supper rabbit? Let me quickly explain it. During the life of Christ, he was asked 307 questions. If you go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, get your calculator up, add them together, they ask him 307 questions. Guess how many of those questions he answered? Just guess. If you were here last night, you already know. He answers 3 questions of the 307. Now that is from the master evangelist. Church, I got a question for you this morning. If Jesus is the greatest evangelist who ever lived, and he doesn't answer questions, why are you doing it? Why do you feel compelled to answer all their questions? Well, tell me what you know about tongue speaking. Do you really think you're going to lead someone to Christ by answering that question? Tell me what you think about 666. What do you think about the 144,000? What do you think about Armageddon? What do you think about instrumental music? What do you think about women's role in the church? What do you think about baptism? Brethren, I'm going to challenge you to read your New Testament and notice that Jesus did not answer any of those questions. Because that's not how you teach people. You don't teach people by answering their questions. You teach people by asking your own questions. So I immediately turned it around and said, Brandy, I want you to ask them a question. I want you to ask them if they're planning to come back to Willette. And if they say yes, I said, you've done everything you need to do. Do not answer their question. You ask, hey, would you like to come and learn more? Sure enough, on Sunday morning, they walked right back in the doors. They sat down, and as we sat down and began our service together, they had a Bible. They opened their Bible. They prayed with us. After service was over, I walked up to them and I said, hey, Jimmy and Sharon, did you enjoy the service? They said, we did. I said, we got another custom at this church. I said, Nicole and I like to invite visitors over to the house to eat. I said, would you guys like to come over this week so we could get to know you? And she said, well, I like that. And he said, I like to eat. I said, well, my wife is the best cook in Macon County. I said, Jimmy, if you come over, you're going to enjoy a meal. He said, I'm coming. And so sure enough, that Tuesday, they came over to the house. We sat down, and I'm going to continue my introductory questions. Remember, I got 3 of them. I've already got through question number 1. Question 2, Jimmy, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm a security guard at Bonnell. He told me all about being a security guard at an aluminum factory. When he was finished, I went to Sharon. Sharon, what do you do for a living? She says, I'm a kindergarten teacher. For the next 45 minutes, I heard about every child in her classroom. I knew all about it. She just wants to talk, and I'm listening. Is it important to listen to people? Yes. That's how we build bridges to them. That's how we interact with them. Now is not the time to debate. Now is not the time to argue. Now is not the time to tell them about your children and about all the things you've accomplished. Now is the time to listen to them. Remember, you have one mission, brother. There's only one thing you want. You want a Bible study. So I finished that question. And it was time to eat. We went over to the dining room table. We ate. Things were going pretty good. Came kind of quiet. She looked across the table and she said, hey, Rob, I need to talk to y'all. I said, what do you got, Miss Sharon? She said, Rob, several months ago, I had a surgery. I've been recovering. She said, Rob, I've never been more low in my life. She said, Rob, during that surgery, I haven't got one card, one call, one phone call, one visit from my church. She said, Rob, we go to this big community church. And Rob, I'm telling you, she said, we do mission work with them in the summer in Honduras. And she said, Rob, since I've been sick, I haven't heard from one person. Rob, I don't even know where my preacher lives. I said, Sharon, I'm so sorry. I said, the Willette Church of Christ loves you. She says, I know. She says, I got 70, 80 cards from that church. Y'all are always praying for me. She said, I haven't experienced this much love, and I can't tell. Rob, the church at Willette brought me out of a dark place. That was her words. And she said, Rob, there's something else you need to know. Since Jimmy and I have been married, no one has ever invited us to their home for dinner. You're the first one. I said, Sharon, we're glad. I'm so thankful. And I said, I'm glad. I said, Sharon, it's getting a little late. Why don't you and Jimmy come back next week? We'll keep this going. I'm really enjoying. And she said, I'd like to come back. Jimmy, do you want to come back? She said, will she fix any more of those meals? I said, yes, Jimmy. Lots of food here. And we always know the way to a man is through the stomach. Just feed him, ladies. I promise he's coming back. And I said, my wife is the best cook in Macon County, and my daughter, best dessert maker you'll ever eat from. I said, Jimmy, what do you want? Peanut butter pie. I said, good, I'm for it too. Honey, make a peanut butter pie for us. Nicole, lasagna. Ladies, you don't think that's important? I'm telling you, if you make a home-cooked meal and you invite people to your house, I promise you a Bible study's on the horizon. I promise you it's coming. People love to eat. They love to talk. They came back the next week. We're sitting in the living room. And I'm going to help Jimmy Fisher. I said, Jimmy, you concerned about this country? He said, man, I'm really concerned, Rob. He said, things are getting pretty bad. I said, tell me about it. He said, Rob, we've kicked God out of school. We've kicked prayer out of society. man, our country's godless. And look at what's happened to the morals. I said, I agree, Jimmy. Jimmy, tell me more about this. He said, Rob, it's all in the book of Revelation. Now, brethren, I did not know that. And I said, well, tell me more about the book of Revelation. He said, Rob, he said, it's Armageddon, Battle of Megiddo, 144,666. Rob, earthquakes, volcanoes, it's all prophetic. Rob, everything in America that's happening is happening right now because of the book of Revelation. I didn't know any of that. Brethren, how many of you in the audience want to start a Bible study out in the book of Revelation? Is there anybody here that wants to do that? Not me. You know what I told him? I said, Jimmy, the book of Revelation says a lot of things, but I know how to solve all the problems our country's having. He said, well, how do you do that? I said, I just so happen to have, let me see if I find them. Let's see. Well, they're somewhere. These little booklets, they're called Back to the Bible. In any case, I said, I'd like to share them with you. He said, sure. So we went over to the table, and we sat down around the table, and we opened up the green book. Richard took my Back to the Bible. Look at that. Yes, Richard, thank you, brother. Right here. And you got these in your hands tonight. Everybody have those. And so I said, let's go ahead and open up John 8:32. And we started. They loved it. We went all the way through the study. They're answering all the questions. By the end of the study, Sharon makes a little fish. She goes, like this. You can tell something's wrong. And I looked at her and I said, Sharon, is there something wrong? She says, I'm upset. And I said, well, why? And she says, I want to know how I've learned more about the Bible in this Bible study than I've learned my whole life. She said, I didn't even know there was a difference between the Old and New Testament. I said, I don't know, Sharon, but would you like to learn more? She said, I sure would. I said, we have a second study. It's called the Blue Booklet. Would y'all like to come back? Sharon said, well, I want to come back. Jimmy said, will she make any more of those desserts? I said, oh, yes, Jimmy, lots of desserts here. Come back. So they came back. I don't care why he comes back. I just want him to come back. And so we sat around the table. We did book number 2, and they loved it. And then they came back the third week, and we did the red booklet, book number 3. I still remember Jimmy Fisher, because Sharon looked at me, and she says, her tears, tears were coming out of her eyes. She knew. She said, Rob, I think Jimmy and I are. Well, Jimmy said, right, wait just a minute. Preacher, are you trying to tell us we're going to hell? I said, Jimmy, I didn't say that. I said, is there a reason you just said that? Is that something you've read in the Bible? And I said, Jimmy, because if the Bible teaches you're going to heaven, then you're my brother. If there's some things you're missing, we'll fix it tonight. It wasn't just a few minutes later that Jimmy looked at me and he says, Rob, I think Sharon and I need to be baptized. I said, let's go to the water. We got in the car, went down to the church building, baptized Jimmy, baptized Sharon. Let me share with you this picture. This is within 1 year of their conversion. Sharon Fisher is conducting a Bible study. And on the other side is a new convert, and that's Betty McCarter. And here on the other side, that's Richard Pratt from last night. I told you his story. He's conducting a Bible study. On the other side, that's Jimmy Fisher. He's conducting a Bible study. I want to know how brand new Christians are conducting Bible studies. And those of us who've been sitting in the pews for 30 years, we still don't know enough. I want to know, do you know more than Sharon Fisher? She just came out of the watery grave. Do you know more than she does? She's able to conduct a Bible study. I want you to write this down in your book. Everybody write this down. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's the theme of this entire lesson. If we want to get people to the Bible study, that's step 3, we're going to have to prospect the heart. I've already made contact. It's because, well, listen to this, church, it's because of Brandy Fleming that we've got to contact. It's because of the Willette Church of Christ that we prospected them. And now we're able to conduct a Bible study. It's because of the Bible study. It's not because of lasagna. It's not because of cards. It's because of the Bible study. They become a child of God. Now, if you don't follow the model, you won't have evangelism. If you can evangelize without doing that, I'd like you to show me how. You got to meet people, love people, teach people, and then you baptize people. It's pretty simple. It's not complicated. But you're not going to be successful if you don't follow the model that the New Testament provides. You say, well, Rob, where is that in the New Testament? Everybody take your Bible, I'll show you. It's not hard to find. It's all over the place. Everybody take your Bibles and go to Acts 2:47. I'll show you. Praising God and having the favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. I want you to focus in on one word. And I bet it's not the word that you think. Because when we look at that verse, we normally focus in on church or added. Because we would say that any church of Christ or any church you can join is not the church of Christ. Because the church is one that God adds you to, and that's right. But brethren, that's not the word I'm looking at. I'm looking at the word favor. And having favor with the people. Did you know the first century church was a favorable church? People loved the church. They loved to be around them. They enjoyed the company and the fellowship of Christians. The word favor has its roots with the word grace. It means grace on the part of the giver, kindness, acceptable. The first century church was a kind church, an acceptable church. So what about Needmore Road? What kind of church are you? Do the people know that you're kind? I mean, if you were David Shannon one time, he's the president of Freed Hardman, Richard, he came to me and said, hey, Rob, we're over at Mount Juliet was a booming church. And sometimes you just hit the right time at the right place. And that whole community was just booming. And David said, I was concerned about our evangelism. He said, I wanted to find out what the community thought about Mount Juliet. So we commissioned a little study. He said we went out to the neighboring houses. I mean, Mount Juliet's a massive church. The steeple is huge. And as we walked around, we had one question survey. And this is the question. Y'all ready? What do you think about the Mount Juliet Church of Christ? So we were right behind our church. There's a big subdivision. We knocked on the door. Yes, my name's David, my wife, and I'm the preacher. I like to know, what do you think about of the Mount Juliet Church of Christ? What do you think about us? Mount Juliet who? The Mount Juliet Church of Christ, right over there. Who are you? Mount Juliet Church of Christ. The steeple, in the shadow on your house right there. Oh, is that who you are? Do you think we're going to grow if that's what the community, if that's what the community thinks about us? Do you really think we're going to grow? Absolutely not. What about the first century church? Well, they had the favor of the people. They sold their lands and houses. Distribution was made to every man as according as he had. It was a giving people. I mean, those people really cared about, it wasn't the church of the Pharisees. They didn't like that church. It wasn't the church of the Sadducees. The people didn't like that church either. But they loved the church of Christ. The church had the favor of the people. Do you know there's only one verse in the Bible where the word favor is used to describe a person? And it's Jesus. Look at this word. Jesus increased in wisdom, intellectually, stature, physically, favor with God, religiously. But look at that last one. And we're going to hang our hat right here this morning. Jesus had the favor of the people. He was a man of the people. Question, church, did people like to be around Jesus? Yes or no? Absolutely. They loved him. They enjoyed spending time with him. They wanted to eat with him. They wanted to hang out with him. They wanted to listen to him. Now, let me ask you this. Do people like to hang around you? Do people enjoy talking to you? Do you make yourself available to talk to people? Are you a friendly person? Or do you have the favor of the people? Because I'm suggesting this morning this. If we don't develop the characteristics of Christ in our life, where people say, hey, he cares about me. This guy cares. He loves me. This is a church that helps. This is the church that cares. This is the church that wants to reach out. Some say, preacher, what you're asking today just won't work in America. Preacher, we live in the age of the golden arches. Fast food windows define us. We don't have time for this. I disagree. Genesis 2, verse 18. Foundational verse of creation. What did God say? It is not good that man should be alone. It is not good that man should be alone. God, when he wired you up, he made us to be social creatures. God knows that you don't do well when you're alone. If there's any lesson we should have learned from COVID, it's when the government locks you in your house and doesn't let you out for 3 months, it's not good for you. I mean, think about what happened. Depression goes up, anxiety goes up, prescription medication goes up, alcohol use goes up, drug use goes up, domestic violence goes up, assaults go up, murder goes up. Why? Because when you isolate people, it's not good for you. So let's talk, church. So church, we've never been more connected socially since Adam and Eve. I mean, think about it. We've got YouTube and X and Facebook and Twitter and whatever it is, Facebook, and we've got Instagram, and look at all the, what do we call these, by the way? What are these things called? Social media apps. Is that right? You got 5,000 Facebook friends. Man, look at all the followers I got on my YouTube channel. But with all these instruments designed to create a virtual social world, let me just be blunt. Do you know what this has created? The loneliest people on the face of the earth. Because we have no flesh and blood people to talk to. Because we are replacing people with artificial connections. And there's one thing that God, when He wired you up, you need people. You need to talk to people. You need to be around people. We thrive off other people. We live in the loneliest world that's ever existed. People need people. I'm going to give you 4 things you can do. I'm going to write these down very quickly. I want you to open your book. I want to give you 4 things you can do to improve your evangelistic success. 4 things. I gave you 3 last night. I'm going to give you 4. Right now, I'm going to do it very quickly. This would be number 4 in my list. Open up your house. And daily in the temple and in every house, they cease not to teach and preach Jesus. You want to have a Bible study? Get them in your home. Acts 2:46. And they continued daily with one accord in the temple and breaking of bread from house to house. How did they spread the word? House to house. Acts 20:20. How I kept back nothing that was profitable unto you, but I showed you and taught you publicly and from house to house. Brethren, you got to open up your house. We need to take the sinners and bring them on in. If you'll do that, you'll have Bible studies. When Jesus was on the way to the cross, He stopped by and He met a man by the name of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus climbed up. He's a tax collector, remember? He climbs up into a sycamore tree just to see him. And Jesus spots him. He says, Zacchaeus, come down from there, for today I must abide at thine house. What do you think Jesus wanted to talk about? You think He wanted to know more about Roman tax policy? I seriously doubt it. You think He wanted to know about the marginal rate? Verse 10 of that same chapter, the Son of Man comes to do what? To seek and save the lost. Brethren, I don't have time to beat around the bush. Let me just say it. If you want to be like Jesus, you must seek and save the lost. If you are not seeking and saving the lost, you are not like Jesus. That was His mission. That's why He came. And we say, I want to be like Jesus. Then do what He did. We must emulate the Son of God. Number 5, hospitality. You've got to learn how to be hospitable, to treat people. I want to take you to Matthew 9. And it came to pass as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with Him and His disciples. When's the last time you sat down with sinners and you ate with them? Do you know Jesus spent so much time eating with sinners, they called Him one? He's a sinner. He's a wine bibber. He's a publican. Brethren, Jesus spent so much time with sinners that the Pharisees and the Sadducees made fun of Him. He wore it as a badge of honor. In fact, Jesus, notice what He says. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to the disciples, your master eateth with publicans and sinners. And Jesus heard that. He said, they that hold need not a physician, but they that are weak. Go and learn what this means. Have mercy and not sacrifice. For I am not come to call the righteous, but the sinners to repentance. Brethren, when we do that, we'll convert people. if we sit in our homes, if we come to our church buildings and we lock the doors and we don't get out to the community, I guarantee we will not grow 100%. I mean, what kind of business? I mean, let's just take it out of the church. Let's just talk about a business. What kind of business grows following the model that we follow? Those businesses are bankrupt. They'll never make it. Let's go to our sixth one. Hearken. You got to learn to listen. You got to learn to listen. James 1:19, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. That means you're to listen twice as much as you're to speak. We've got to listen to people. This is the 6th quality right here. We've got to learn how to listen. And he said unto them, take heed what you hear. When I was sitting in the living room and Jimmy and Sharon were talking to Nicole and I, Sharon said something and I was listening. You ready? In my first marriage. You think that's important? You think that's information that you need to know? It was very important. And so I was listening. And she said, in my first marriage. And so when she said that, I said, okay, I need to make a note that there's a prior marriage. And in a Bible study, I'm going to have to address that at some point. Not now, but we'll address it at some point. And as Jimmy was talking about, the book of Revelation, Rob, don't you know you'll be left behind if you're not prepared? I mean, you could be driving your car and all of a sudden zoomed up into the rapture. He believes in premillennialism. I was listening. Is now the time to address premillennialism? No. But I'm listening. And so listening, it allows you to get information. When you write this quote down. This is Bobby Bates. He was one of the greatest soul winners of the last generation. And he wrote this down. He said, if you show people interest, they will give you information. Write that down. If you show people interest, they will give you information. That's all. That's what be careful. He said, take heed what you hear. You've got to listen to people. And you know, when they tell you things, you're responsible for teaching them. You're responsible. When they make those things known, you can't just ignore it. I can't just pretend like she didn't say in my first marriage. Brethren, with what measure you need, it shall be measured to you. I have to address it. I can't ignore it. I can't pretend like there's no sin here. There may not be, there may be, but I've got to find out. I'm listening. Luke chapter 8 and 18, take heed therefore how you hear. Look them in the eyes and be concerned about them. Care about people. Give them your time. Let's go to the last principle. Hesitate. You got to learn how to hesitate. We got to learn how to hold back. And so as they're talking to you about things that maybe you even disagree on, you got to hold back. You got to pick your time. In fact, in John chapter 2 and verse 4, Jesus says, my time is not yet come. Don't tell no man. Don't tell him about me yet. Don't tell him about the miracle. It's not time. When you're with somebody and they're bringing up religious topics, I want you to ask this question. Do I need to tackle that topic for them to become a Christian? If the answer is no, let it be. So if they bring up something like the rapture, I want you to ask a question. Does a person have to understand everything there is to know about the second coming of Christ to become a Christian? Do they, Richard? Richard, are there entire congregations in the New Testament that did not understand the second coming? Thessalonica, they didn't understand it. Friends, may I propose this to the church? Listen, church, most people don't understand the first coming of Christ, much less the second. Why are we starting out with the second? Why don't we start out with the first? So you hold back. You hold back. You keep your silence. You hold your peace, just like Jesus. There are situations where you should not say anything. Just hold back. In fact, let me give them to you. All right? When they bring up their sports teams, hold back. When they bring up the politics, hold back. When they bring up money, hold back. When they bring up doctrine, hold back. Brethren, do you know what you want? A Bible study. I'll do my fighting at Golgotha. I'm going to take him to Calvary. I'm going to get them in a method. I'm going to take them from the green booklet to the red booklet, but I'm not going to get distracted from whatever it is they want to talk about. Brethren, we're the world's worst at doing this. And because of that, we have no Bible studies. I taught you 4 things in this lesson. 4 things I taught you this morning. I taught you, number 1, open up your house. I showed you the verses. I'm challenging this church. You got to open up your house and bring sinners in. Number 5, I said you need to learn how to extend hospitality. How do you treat other people? Go fishing with them. Go hiking. Go shopping. Go to the ball game with them. Sit in their homes. Go to the hospital. Visit with them. Go help them mow their lawn. Fix a mailbox. Rake leaves. Shop with them. Bring them groceries. But you got to show them love. How many gardeners? Anybody ever garden here? Are there any gardens in Dayton, Ohio? Okay, there are. Good. And when we garden, what do we do with the soil? We work it up. We till it. We fertilize it. Brethren, when you meet someone, it's unfertilized soil. That's step 1. Look at the soil. It doesn't look good, does it? But when you prospect it, what happens to the soil? It riches the soil. Every ounce of love you put into somebody brings you closer to the cross. Take the rocks out. Till the soils of the heart. I believe if the community at Needmore Road knew this church, if they knew the love you had in your heart right now, sir, if they knew the care you had, if they knew, ladies, how much you were concerned about them, I believe this church building would be full. The problem is they don't know. They just don't know. Listen to people. You got to listen. Because the information they give you is vital for the salvation of their soul. Where are they located? Do they believe in God or not? Do they have moral issues that you need to work through or not? But you've got to listen to people. Number 7, hold back. Hesitate. Hesitate. Don't climb Mount Version. Don't climb Mount Tongue Speaking. Don't climb Mount Second Coming. There's only one mountain, church, you need to climb, and it's Calvary. Climb Calvary. Take him to the cross, brother. Do your Bible study. I'm going to offer the invitation. Brethren, you better be ready to sing, because we're going to do some singing this morning. Brandy Fleming walked down the aisle. She had a piece of paper in her hand. And on that piece of paper was the name Dustin McKinney. I unwrapped the paper, and there it is. She's a bringer. She's giving me a name. That's contact. I got step 1. Everybody with me? Step 1? Now we got to go to step 2. I got to contact. His name's Dustin McKinney. He's got cancer. It's inoperable. It's bad. He's the basketball coach for one of the local high schools. I coach basketball for one of the local high schools. I coach for Cookville. He coaches in Red Bowling Springs. I get to play Dustin McKinney every year. I don't like to play Dustin McKinney because I know what's going to happen. It's very good. And so in any case, I went to the church and we put him on the prospect list, page 105. We got the cards being sent out. The prayers are being offered. About a week later, I grabbed my son, Jared. I said, Jared, let's go visit Coach McKinney. We travel over to the house. We knock on the door. He opens it up. He says, Rob, what are you doing? I said, Dustin, I heard about your cancer. He said, man, Rob, it's really bad. And as we were sitting there talking, I said, Dustin, I said, I came to pray for you. Would you let me pray? He said, absolutely. We bowed our heads. We prayed. When I was done with that prayer, I said, Dustin, I'd like to come back and pray again. He said, Rob, you can come back any day you want to pray. Don't worry, I did. I came back as many times as I could to pray. I went back that Sunday. It was a nursing home ministry. I was with one of my elders. After we finished, I said, Steve, let's go visit Dustin McKinney. He said, Rob, I don't know Dustin. I said, I'll introduce you. So we went over to the house, knocked on the door. He saw him. Hey, Rob, what's going on? Who's with you there? I said, one of my friends, Steve Draper. Man, any friend of Rob's a friend of mine. Rob, y'all like to come on in? I said, sure. Now I'm in the house. I have one mission, sister. There's one thing I want. I sat down in that house and I looked over that house. You know what I saw? I saw your card, brother. I saw your card, sister. Young man, I saw your card. I saw the cards that you had been sending, and they were all over the house. And I said, Dustin, where'd all these cards come from? I don't ask questions I don't know the answers to. He said, that church you preach for, Rob, they're every day y'all send me cards. And then he said this. He said, Rob, those cards get me through the day. I read them. I need them. I said, Dustin, it's the least we can do. I said, I noticed outside, Dustin, your grass is getting kind of tall. He said, yeah, doctor won't let me mow it. It's treatment. I can't get into the sun. I said, don't worry about it. The Willette Church of Christ will mow your lawn until you're better. One of my elders, Steve, looked over at me and said, we will. When you work with elders, it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission. It's all right. We sat there and talked for a little while. We prayed, and I got to meet his wife, Natalie, his son, Neelan. We left that day. I went to the church that Sunday evening, and one of the elders said to me this. They said, Rob, we need to meet with you. Oh, boy. And then they said, no, that call about that lawn was good. They said, hey, Rob, we can mow lawns. We want you to go give Dustin McKinney a message. I said, what is it? Tell him the Willette Church of Christ wants to pay his highest medical bill. Wow. I said, are you sure you want me to say that? They said, yes, don't tell anybody. I went back over to his house, and I had a gift to give. I'm prospecting. Remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Remember that. I told him, I said, Dustin, the Willette Church of Christ wants to pay your highest medical bill. And his mouth has dropped. He said, I can't believe y'all offer that. I said, we love you, Dustin. We care. We're praying for you every day. Natalie says, hey, Rob, we got a surgery schedule. We finally found a doctor's at Vanderbilt Hospital. He'll do the surgery. I said, great, Natalie, I'll be there. What date? Rob, that's too far for you to travel. I said, Natalie, I'll be there. On the day of the surgery, I got up early that morning to make that long drive. I looked at my wife. I said, Nicole, I'll text you all day. Keep the church updated. Email the church because we're having a prayer vigil the whole day where everyone's praying for Dustin. I got to the hospital. It was Dustin's mom, Natalie's mom, and they took him back. We prayed. That's the longest surgery I've ever sat through. But at the end of the day, the surgeon comes out and he says, McKinney family, we raised our hand. He came over. He said, Miss McKinney, your husband's surgery was the only one I did today. I canceled every other surgery. It was worse than we thought, Miss McKinney. Miss McKinney, I'm a very determined surgeon, and I don't give up easily. Miss McKinney, I got it out. I got margins all the way around it. And we said, praise God for that. And I said, Mr. Surgeon, can I pray? And he said, son, you better. I've never seen anything like this. Before I left that hospital, I looked at Natalie. I said, Natalie, there's something I need to talk to you and Dustin about. When Dustin's better, would you let me know? She said, you'll be the first to know, Rob. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. Dustin says, hey, Rob, would you like to come see me? I'll be right there, Dustin. I loaded up my wife, my daughter, my son. We got in the car. We pulled into the driveway. Walked inside and sat down. He said, Rob, what was it you wanted to talk to me about? I said, Dustin, I'd like to talk to you about Jesus. He said, I was hoping that's what it was. I brought out those little booklets called Back to the Bible. We did the Bible study. And guess what happens when you do Bible studies? Advance to the next slide, please, or maybe you can't. There it is. You baptize them. Can you write a card? 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 Can you give me a name? Can you give me a name of somebody who has cancer, surgery, they've lost a loved one? Do you know someone that needs to be brought to Christ? Do you know anybody? Church, I'm going to ask this church a question. I want to know, can this church at Needmore Road do what I just showed you? Can you do that? Yes or no, church? Amen from the men. Can you do it? Brethren, if we don't change our culture, we will not make it. This is what I'm talking about. We have got to get busy. And the men of this church brought this school here because we're going to give you all the training that we can to help this church get out of the pews and reach their community. If you'll do that, this church will grow. And to God be the glory, because it's not about you and me. This is about Him. My wife wrote a book, and in that book, this is what she said. The hospitality we were shown. This is Sharon Fisher. This is Sharon Fisher's chapter. This is what Sharon wrote. The hospitality we were shown made all the difference in the world to our willingness to be involved in a Bible study. Without this woman, there is no study. You want to know why I have studies? You want to know why we baptize hundreds of people? This is why. Because she opens her home, she makes the meal, and she is able to extend that kindness that I'm just not very good at. You have to earn the right to have a Bible study, church. You have to earn it. Ladies, you are indispensable to this. You widow ladies out there, you're important to God. You can write a card. You're good at it. If you're not a Christian this morning, you've been sitting in the pews, maybe you know what you need to do. We're going to sing a song and we're going to encourage you to come. Maybe you know you need to confess the name of Christ and be baptized for the remission of your sins. God will place you in the greatest army on earth. You'll be a member of the Church of Christ. We're not going to vote on it. We're not going to belabor it. We're just going to let God do the work. But you have got to make that commitment. And if a Christian, if you've been sitting in the pews for too long, you have not engaged your community. You have not gotten involved in evangelism. And you need to make correction. We're going to sing this song and we're going to encourage you to come. We'll pray for you and with you. Maybe you need strength this morning. Maybe you need courage. Maybe you just need to say, God, I've been unfaithful. Whatever the need is, this invitation song is sung for us. Brother, just keep singing. Just keep singing. Because there's somebody here that's coming.